A violent storm ruled the night, the kind that felt alive, like it carried a personal grudge against every soul trapped beneath it. Thunder snapped over the ancient stone forum, rolling through the massive pillars carved with wolf heads and battle scenes. Rain hammered the marketplace, turning dust into mud and washing blood into thin red rivers that snaked between the marble tiles. Torches hissed in the wind, their flames bending sideways as if afraid to burn too brightly in such a night. The entire space, built for spectacle, punishment, and power, seemed to breathe with a restless, hungry pulse. And in the middle of that chaos ran a girl who had already lost too much to turn back. She ran barefoot, feet slipping on wet stone, lungs straining as if her ribs might crack from the effort. Her breath came out in sharp, shaky bursts. Her arm still dripped blood, warm against the cold rain, from where she'd torn herself free of the iron shackles that had held her against the auction platform. The skin around her wrists was raw, bruised, and open in places, but she didn't stop to look. She didn't have time to feel the pain. Survival was the only thing she could hear through the storm, the primal instinct pounding in her chest harder than any drumbeat. The forum behind her still echoed with shouts. The auction master yelled curses in a voice that cracked with fury. He called her many names: traitor, criminal, cursed bloodline wolf, names meant to strip away her dignity and turn her into a spectacle for the crowd. But she didn't look back. She couldn't. If she paused for even one heartbeat, the guards would be on her, dragging her back to the auction block where wolves like her were sold, punished, or sacrificed depending on the highest bidder's mood. Tonight had been meant for the Empire's mating ceremony, the grand ritual where noble wolves claimed their chosen partners. But this year, the celebration had been twisted into something darker. The elders had declared her bloodline too dangerous, a risk to the Empire's balance. That alone had been enough to justify dragging her into the marketplace, branding her as something less than human, something to be displayed and disposed of. She'd stood there on the cold stone platform, her wrists chained high above her head, her feet sinking into wet sand, surrounded by strangers who whispered about her like she was a prophecy gone wrong. But now, everything was falling apart. The storm wasn't only outside, it was inside her too. As she darted between two massive marble columns, her fingers grazed their slick surface for balance. Behind her, the heavy boots of the Roman-inspired guards slammed against the ground in steady, merciless pursuit. These weren't ordinary soldiers. They wore wolf-crested shields strapped across their backs and carried spears etched with runes meant to suppress shifting. Their armor was dark iron, marked with glowing lines that pulsed in the rain. They were trained to hunt beings like her, wolves who didn't fit neatly into the Empire's hierarchy. They were gaining ground. Each time lightning flashed, their shadows split across the forum walls, tall and violent and closing in. The rain soaked her hair, plastering it to her face. Her body trembled uncontrollably, not just from exhaustion but from something deeper, something alive under her skin. Something she didn't fully understand, something she'd never been able to control. Every time fear spiked, heat rippled through her veins. Silver light, soft, faint, but unmistakable, flashed just beneath her skin, like sparks fighting to escape. Her breath caught. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. Not now. Not here. Not in front of them. But her body didn't listen. A shiver ran through her spine, sharp, electric, and her shoulders jerked forward as if something inside was trying to break out. Her bones didn't shift fully, but they threatened to. Her nails lengthened, pulsing with a ghost of silver flame. Her pupils thinned. It was just enough to give her away. One of the guards yelled from behind, "She's shifting. Contain her before the prophecy takes hold." Panic flared in her chest. Her legs nearly gave out. She pushed forward anyway, every muscle screaming. She slipped past a row of chained criminals, wolves, humans, hybrids, displayed on stone platforms beneath the flickering torchlight. Some reached out toward her, not to grab her, but almost in silent recognition. She wasn't the only one who had suffered under the Empire's judgment. But she was the one being hunted tonight. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears so loudly she didn't hear the first spear hit the ground beside her. It clanged against the stone and skidded to a stop, sparks flying where metal met marble. The second spear grazed her leg, tearing into her skin in a fast, burning sting. She stumbled, caught herself, and forced her body to keep moving. Her vision blurred for a moment. She blinked hard, rainwater and blood mixing on her eyelashes. She knew she wouldn't last long. Not while running. Not while bleeding. Not while her power threatened to tear through her skin. She cut through the marketplace, weaving between the panicked crowd. People scrambled out of her path, some shouting warnings, others pointing her out to the guards. The storm drowned out their voices, but she could see their faces clearly: fear, fascination, disgust. They had been told she was dangerous. Cursed. Born to bring destruction. To them, she was a story they'd heard since childhood, standing in front of them in the flesh. A monster they could touch. A living omen of ruin. The weight of it pressed on her chest, heavier than the storm. The auctioneer's voice rose again, echoing across the forum. Do not let her escape. She belongs to the ceremony. Her blood seals the ritual. Her stomach twisted. Her blood. Her sacrifice. That had been the real reason she'd been dragged to the auction block tonight. She wasn't meant to be sold. She was meant to be offered. The elders wanted to use her as a living hinge between this world and whatever power they believed would bless their empire. They believed her bloodline had the ability to open, or destroy, ancient pathways. And they didn't care which outcome they received, as long as the ritual was completed. A cold dread washed over her, mixing with the storm. She pushed harder, ignoring the pain in her leg and the burning in her lungs. She ducked under a toppled wooden cart, scattering its fruit across the ground. She darted past a line of chained wolves who snarled at the guards but softened their eyes when they looked at her. For a moment, she wondered if they saw themselves in her, someone fighting against chains too heavy to carry. The guards closed in. Their breath came in harsh grunts, their armor clinking in rhythm with their strides. She could feel their presence pressing against her back like a closing wall. Her pulse quickened. Her knees buckled. Her vision flickered again. The power inside her surged, growing too strong to manage. Silver flame shimmered under the surface of her skin, pulsing like a heartbeat that didn't belong to her. Her fingertips glowed. The air around her cracked softly, tiny sparks, like embers trying to be born. Lightning tore across the sky at the same moment her foot slipped on the wet stone. She stumbled forward and collided with the edge of a crowd gathering near the temple steps. The people around her gasped, stepping aside as if she carried death itself. Her strength failed. Her legs gave out. She pitched forward, bracing herself for the unforgiving impact of stone. But she didn't hit the ground. Strong arms caught her, arms warm despite the cold storm, steady despite the chaos. She gasped at the unexpected touch, her head tilting upward instinctively. Through the blur of rain and exhaustion, she saw only a silhouette at first, a hooded, cloaked figure standing tall in the darkness. His cloak was soaked, clinging to the hard planes of his chest and shoulders, but he didn't tremble. He didn't waver. He held her as if he had done it 1,000 times before. Lightning illuminated his jaw, a sharp, striking line, and the hint of a scar tracing down his neck, half hidden by his collar. She tried to pull away, instinct screaming at her not to trust anyone, especially a stranger in a night like this. But her body wouldn't obey. Her limbs were too heavy. Her vision too dim. Then he leaned in. His voice cut through the chaos in a quiet whisper that somehow felt louder than thunder. He whispered her name. Her real name. The name no one here should know. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. A cold shiver crawled up her spine, not of fear but of something dangerously close to recognition. She stared at him, searching his shadowed face for an explanation she didn't have the strength to demand. But he didn't give her answers. He simply shifted his grip, pulling her closer, shielding her body with his own as the guards rushed toward them. Rain ran down his hood, dripping off the edge like liquid silver, but he didn't move an inch. He stood between her and the world. Between her and danger. Between her and the truth she wasn't ready to face. When the nearest guard shouted for him to release her, he turned his head slightly. Not enough to reveal his whole face, just enough for the torchlight to catch his eyes beneath the shadow of his hood. Eyes that glowed faintly amber, like burning embers waiting for breath. Eyes that did not belong to a normal wolf. He tightened his hold on her trembling body. With one smooth motion, he swept her off her feet and stepped back into the shadow of the temple archway, where torchlight couldn't reach. And as her consciousness swayed, slipping like sand through her fingers, she heard him whisper again, not her name this time, but a promise. Soft, low, and threaded with a kind of certainty she had never known in her life. "I've got you." Her eyes fluttered closed. She could feel herself fading, sinking into the warmth of his chest as the storm raged around them. And in that drifting moment, caught between fear and surrender, she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whoever he was, he wasn't letting her go. Not tonight. Not ever. And if you're already feeling this story gripping you, holding your attention the way his arms held her, don't forget to subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections for more heart-pounding shifter tales just like this. The silence after her scream felt too sharp, too still, like the air itself was holding its breath. I could feel the shift rising under my skin, burning through the last threads of my control. The scent of fear wasn't hers this time. It belonged to the men outside the door, guards who had no idea the creature they'd provoked was moments from breaking free. My pulse throbbed in my jaw, in my wrists, beneath every inch of skin that stretched too tightly over bone. She was behind me, trembling, clutching the blanket against her chest as though it could shield her from what she was witnessing. I didn't want her to see me like this, half human, half something else, a storm in flesh, but I couldn't stop the rise of instinct. Not now. The door handle rattled. A warning. A challenge. A mistake. The second they forced the door open, everything inside me snapped. I moved before thought existed, before fear, before restraint. My body surged forward with a speed that punched the air from the room. The first guard barely registered the blur of motion before I seized him by the collar and hurled him back into the hallway wall. Wood splintered. Stone cracked. He slid to the ground with a strangled groan, alive but stunned, breath punched out of him. The others froze. They weren't expecting a monster. They were expecting a man. Too late. My chest expanded with the force of another shift threatening to rip through, but I fought against it, grounding myself with the one thing that tethered me, her breath behind me, sharp and uneven. I couldn't fully transform inside this room. If she saw the final stage, the real version of what I wasn't sure she'd ever stop shaking. Even the half-form was enough to paralyze them. Claws hovered where fingernails should be. My vision flickered between human warmth and predator gold. My heart beat like it was trying to tear its way out of my ribs. "Move," I growled, voice layered with something not wholly human. The guards scrambled back, dragging their wounded companion with them, the fear radiating from their skin thick enough to taste. When the hallway fell silent again, I slammed the door shut and braced my palms against it. I stood there, breathing hard, chest rising and falling like I'd run for miles. The shift inside me roared, demanding release, demanding blood, demanding dominance, but her presence snuffed the worst of it out, bit by bit. Slowly, painfully, my claws receded. My breath steadied. My heartbeat aligned with something more human. But I didn't turn around. I was afraid of what she would see in my eyes. "Are you?" Her voice quivered, soft but steadying itself. "Are you hurt?" Hurt. The word hit me harder than the guards ever could. No one asked me that. Not in years. Not since before I learned what it meant to survive with teeth bared and heart barricaded. "I'm fine," I said, though my voice was still roughened by what lingered beneath the surface. I finally turned. She hadn't moved from the bed. Her fear was still there, simmering, but not the kind that recoiled or turned hateful. It was the kind that came from shock, from witnessing something she had no guide for understanding. Her eyes scanned me. My hands, my forearms, the fading evidence of claws that had nearly torn through skin. "You protected me," she whispered. Not a question. A realization. I swallowed, jaw tightening. They shouldn't have come in like that. But we both knew that wasn't the reason. I would have ripped the entire fortress apart brick by brick before letting anyone touch her. She rose slowly, as though approaching a wild creature she wasn't sure she should trust. Bare feet met the cold floor. Her steps were hesitant but intentional, each one landing like a small act of courage. When she was finally close enough to reach out, she hovered her hand near mine. "Is it always like that for you?" she asked, voice softer now, threaded with something edging dangerously close to empathy. The truth clawed at my throat. No one deserved to hear it. But she was already inside the part of me I protected with teeth and rage. "It's worse," I admitted. "You saw the part one can still control." Her breath hitched, not in fear but in something like awe. Her fingers brushed my wrist. Just that. A light touch. Barely contact at all. But it sent a wave through my bloodstream that nearly dropped me to my knees. The beast inside me, always snarling, always coiled, went quiet. Calm. Listening. She didn't pull away. She didn't flinch. She didn't treat me like a creature forged only of danger. Her next whisper was a confession wrapped in trembling bravery. "I wasn't afraid of you," she said. "I was afraid for you." That single sentence fractured something inside me I thought was untouchable. And in the echo of her words, the world outside our door shifted, the footsteps of men regrouping, the tension thickening in the hall, the distant ring of steel on armor. They were preparing for a second attempt. Only this time, they'd come with orders. And I already knew who those orders were aimed at. I stepped closer to her, standing so near her breath mingled with mine. "Stay behind me," I murmured, voice low enough to vibrate against her skin. "Whatever happens next, don't let go of me." Her fingers curled into the fabric of my shirt. Her breathing synced with mine. Her pulse fluttered, terrified and trusting all at once. "You saved me," she whispered. "So I'll stay." And just like that, the beast inside me rose again. Not in fury this time, but in purpose. Because now it wasn't just about survival. It was about her. And I would tear apart every man outside that door. Before I let them take her from me. I didn't sleep. Not really. My body remained alert, coiled, ready to rip through the next wave of soldiers that dared approach the door. But she, her fingers still curled against the fabric of my shirt, slipped into unconsciousness with the kind of exhaustion that only comes after a day where your world collapses and rebuilds itself all at once. I carried her to the bed, laying her down gently. Her breathing steadied, slow and fragile. For the first time since I'd met her, the harsh lines of fear eased from her expression. But sleep didn't grant her peace. The moment her eyes fluttered beneath their lids, I felt the shift in the air. Dreams. Not soft, harmless ones. Not the kind you drift through. These were the dreams that clawed their way out of the past, dragging her with them. Her fingers twitched. Her body curled in on itself. A faint whimper escaped her lips. And then the world around her changed. I wasn't inside the dream, but I could feel its edges, like a cold wind seeping through a crack in a wall. Something deep inside her was unraveling, pulling memories to the surface with vicious accuracy. Her voice trembled in the dark. "Don't burn me. I didn't mean to." The words hit me like a blade. And the dream swallowed her whole. She stands in the middle of a stone courtyard, small hands clenched against her chest. She can't be more than 7 years old, tiny, wild-haired, barefoot, shivering in the pre-dawn cold. The sky is the color of dying embers, the horizon stained with smoke from distant Roman outposts. Her pack lies nestled in a remote corner of the frontier, cut off from the northern tribes, cut off from the south, cut off from mercy. Elders circle her. Their robes are thick with woven sigils, their expressions carved into stern lines. Their breath clouds the air, merging with the faint mist rising from the silver altar before her. She knows this ritual. She's seen it every year. It's meant for wolves much older than her. But they said she needed it early. They said the signs couldn't be ignored. Her mother stands behind her, trembling, not with fear, but with a grief so sharp it bleeds through the air. Please, her mother whispers. She's only a child. She is not a child, an elder snaps. She is what her blood has made her. Her blood. Her curse. They press a silver bowl into her hands. It burns. She bites down hard enough to taste blood, refusing to drop it. The elder raises his staff. The pack watches. The mountain wind stirs, carrying whispers of prophecy. Begin. She steps forward, heart pounding against her ribs. The altar glows faintly. The symbols etched into stone shimmer like trapped lightning. She lifts the bowl, offering it to the spirits as tradition demands. But something goes wrong. The moment her breath touches the silver, the world ignites. Not normal flame. Not red. Not gold. Silver. A searing, impossible blaze erupts from her hands, shooting up her arms and engulfing the altar. Elders recoil. Wolves scream. Mothers pull their children close. The stone beneath her feet cracks, molten light spilling through the fractures like spilled moonlight. She collapses, her knees hitting the ground. Her throat tightens. Her vision blurs. What did you do? An elder cries. She tries to speak but only smoke escapes her lips, silver-tinted, burning, unnatural. Her mother rushes forward but is restrained, held back as though she were a criminal herself. It wasn't her, her mother sobs. She didn't call the flame. She doesn't even know how. But the elders have already decided. The moment the silver fire dies, the verdict comes like a blade to the throat. An Ember Wolf. The words are spit, not spoken. A curse older than the Roman Republic. A whisper in ancient war songs. A bloodline believed to bring ruin wherever it rises. Ember wolves cannot be bonded, an elder declares. Their power consumes all they touch. Her mother shakes her head violently. No. No, she's gentle. She's kind. She is cursed, another elder interrupts. And she is forbidden from joining any mating ceremony. She must never be allowed to bond. The girl trembles, staring at her burned palms. Skin blistered, veins glowing faintly with silver residue. She wants to hide her hands. Hide herself. Hide her shame. But there is no place to hide. Not when the entire pack steps back from her. Not when not a single wolf moves closer. Not even those she once played with. Her mother breaks free and runs to her, gathering her into her arms. But the elders turn away, final in their judgment. She cannot stay, the chief elder says. Her presence endangers us all. And that is the day the world decides she is too dangerous to love. Her dream shifts, years pass in seconds. She's older now, maybe 13. Shackled in a cold cell beneath the pack's council hall. Not because she harmed anyone. Not because she threatened anything. But because the elders feared what she might become. They force silver cuffs around her wrists to keep her flames dormant. They bring her scraps of food like she's an animal. They whisper curses when they pass by. She watches their children train in the courtyard through a crack in the wall, learning to shift, learning to run, learning to be wolves she will never be allowed to stand beside. One night her mother slips into the cell. Eyes red. Hands shaking. Heart shattered. She presses a small carved wooden wolf into her daughter's palm. I won't let them hurt you anymore, her mother whispers. But I can't save you from all of this. Her daughter stares at her with hollow eyes, silver flickering in her irises. They're going to cast me out, she says quietly. Aren't they? Her mother doesn't answer. And that is the answer. Another shift, another sickening leap through time. She is 16. Dragged through the snow by armed men she once called kin. Not to execution. Something worse. The auction block. A place for criminals, cursed bloodlines, and enemies of the packs. A market where wolves were sold as soldiers, slaves, or entertainment for warlords thriving on the frontier's chaos. When they brand her with the sigil marking her as dangerous property, she doesn't scream. Not because she's brave. Because her pain burned out years ago. The cold voice inside her speaks. Never trust anyone. Never love anyone. Never let another alpha touch your heart. Never be claimed. Never be seen. And she swears it so deeply the vow etches itself into bone. Her dream fractures again, symbols shatter, memories bleed together. Chains. Snow. Fire. The scent of iron. The slam of a cage door. The sound of merchants arguing over the price of a cursed wolf. And then, a voice. Low. Rough. Unfathomably familiar. Not from her past. Not from any elder. Not from any captor. It speaks to her in the dream with a name she has never told anyone. Her spirit name. The one given to her before the elders declared her cursed. The one her mother whispered to her only once, the night she was born. A name no one alive should know. Emberwin. The sound of it rips through the nightmare like a blade of light. Her breath catches. The silver flames in the dream flicker, weakening, as though something stronger presses against them. The voice speaks again, closer this time, almost against her skin. Come back to me. Her dream shifts, the world dissolving around her. The chains crumble. The snow melts. The altar collapses into ash. Her childhood self disappears, swallowed by smoke. The fear unraveling in her chest twists into something else. Recognition. Reflexive trust. A pull she cannot fight. The dream collapses entirely. Her eyes snap open. But she doesn't wake gently. She jolts upward, gasping, clutching the sheets like they're the only thing anchoring her to the earth. Sweat drips down her temples. Her breath shakes. Tears cling to the edges of her lashes. Not falling, but bright with the threat of shattering her. I step forward before I realize I'm moving. Her gaze meets mine. Haunted. Wide. Bleeding old wounds that no warrior could survive alone. What did they do to you? I ask softly, so softly it feels like a sin. She flinches, not from fear of me, but from the memory sinking claws into her ribs. I saw it, I continue, voice lower, rougher. I didn't see every detail. But I felt the pain tearing through you. It wasn't just a dream. Her breath trembles. Her hands shake. Her voice is a brittle whisper. It wasn't a dream. It was my life. The room darkens around her confession. And she finally tells the truth she's been carrying like a wound no one ever stitched. They cast me out because of what I am, she says. Because I shifted too young. Because I burned their altar. Because my bloodline is cursed. Her throat closes for a moment. I'm an Ember Wolf. The words fall like ash. She waits for me to recoil. Waits for fear. Waits for disgust. Waits for the reaction she's been conditioned to expect. But I take a step closer. Then another. And another. Until I'm right in front of her, close enough to feel the tremor in her breath. My voice comes out low, breaking with something I haven't felt in years. Your blood is not a curse. She shakes her head hard, backing away as though the truth is too dangerous to hold. You don't understand. They said Ember Wolves destroy everything they touch. They said we bring ruin. They said anyone who bonds with us dies. They lied, I cut in. Her lips part. Her breath falters. My heartbeat is a wildfire in my chest, but steady. Certain. Unshakable. Whoever told you that, I whisper, wanted you afraid of yourself. Silence. Heavy. Charged. Desperate. Her eyes search mine, looking for the same disgust the elders taught her to expect. But she doesn't find it. Not even close. Because the voice in her dream, the one calling her by her spirit name, was mine. She woke with a sharp inhale, the sound torn from somewhere deep in her chest, as though she'd surfaced from a river she never meant to fall into. Her eyes snapped open to firelight, not the chaotic flame of the marketplace torches, but slow-burning braziers carved into the stone floor around her. Their glow pushed shadows up massive obsidian pillars, each shaped like a wolf standing guard over a forgotten throne. For a moment she didn't breathe. Then she realized she couldn't. The air was too heavy, too ancient, too knowing. She pushed herself up slowly, palms pressing against smooth stone carved with symbols she couldn't remember learning but somehow recognized. A low hum thrummed beneath her fingertips, almost like a pulse. The room around her wasn't a room at all. It was a sanctum. Roman in architecture, colonnades, vaulted dome, inlaid patterns of laurel and wolf fang, but older than anything Rome ever built. It smelled of old magic and iron and moonless nights. The ceiling spiraled upward into darkness lit only by thin veins of silver running through the obsidian, glowing faintly like captured lightning. Her breath trembled. She wasn't supposed to be here. This place wasn't for people like her. She drew her knees in, steadying herself, but the moment she moved, the symbols around her flared brighter, lines of silver and ember red blooming beneath her skin's shadow on the floor. Her stomach dropped. Not again. Not here. She flinched backward, knocking into one of the obsidian pillars. It didn't budge. Instead, the entire column answered her touch, rippled with a wave of light that shivered up its carved wolf body like awakening muscle. Easy. The voice was behind her. His voice. She turned sharply, breath caught in her throat. He stood at the threshold of the sanctum, cloak gone now, shoulders squared, posture carrying a weight more regal than any disguise he'd worn. The firelight pulled gold through his hair, shadowed his jaw, and traced the lines of a face carved by command rather than vanity. He didn't look like a stranger anymore. He looked like someone who belonged here. Someone who had brought her here. She scrambled to her feet, pressing her back to the pillar, instinct bristling. Where am I? He approached slowly. Not the way a man does when he wants to corner someone, but the way someone approaches a wild creature he respects enough not to startle. This is the heart of the empire, he said. The oldest shrine beneath the city. Older than the Lupin throne. Older than the Roman walls above us. She shook her head. No. I shouldn't be here. These markings, they're reacting to me. They're not supposed to. They react only to one bloodline. Her pulse stumbled. His eyes held her. Not harshly. Not possessively. But with a recognition that terrified her more than the guards who'd hunted her. The Ember line, he said softly. The blood you were taught to fear. Her stomach twisted. The elders' voices returned like smoke suffocating her lungs, accusations, warnings, their verdict carved into her memory like the brand still faintly scarred across her shoulder blade. You don't understand, she whispered. That line is cursed. His expression didn't flinch. That line is destined. She stared at him, heart hammering hard enough to hurt. You don't know what happened. To my pack. To the frontier. The altar, the fire. I burned everything. My first shift destroyed half the ritual grounds. You think destiny does that? He stepped closer, and the braziers leaned toward him as though they knew him too. I know what you were told, he said quietly. I know the shame they forced on you. The exile. The branding. The fear they carved into you so deeply you bleed it without realizing. Her throat tightened painfully. He went on, voice steady, low. But the truth has never been told to you. Not fully. He lifted a hand, not to touch her, but to gesture toward the far wall where a massive slab of obsidian rose like a monolith. Ancient runes pulsed across it, shifting faintly, as though stirred by her presence. At its center, etched in silver so fine it looked alive, was a wolf with flames curling from its spine. Her breath caught. She knew that shape. She'd drawn it in dirt as a child. She'd seen it in her nightmares. She'd felt it under her skin every time she lost control. "What is this?" she asked, voice barely audible. He stepped beside her, close enough she could feel the warmth of his arm, the steady pulse of power under his skin. "This," he said, "is the prophecy of the Child of the Flame." The title slammed into her chest. No, she backed away. "No, that's not me. That can't be me." He followed, not aggressively, but unwavering. "Look at the inscription. Look at the mark." Her heels hit the edge of the stone platform beneath her. She stopped. "Your birthmark," he said. "The one you hide. The one the elders feared." Her fingers instinctively brushed the spot beneath her ribs where the twisted silver scar lay, the shape of a curled flame. The wall ignited in response. Silver lines flaring bright, rippling outward like a living river. The entire sanctum glowed as if the stone itself remembered something it had been forced to forget. Her breath grew shallow. The heat. The hum under her skin. The pull toward the symbols. It felt like the room was breathing with her. "What does it say?" she whispered, unable to turn away. He stepped to her side again, closer now. Close enough she could feel the gravity of him, as though something deep in his chest reached for something deep in hers. "It says," he murmured, voice low and reverent, "that the Child of the Flame shall rise without moon or omen. That her power will burn through corruption and ash through empire. That her shift belongs to no cycle, no elder, no mate." She shivered. "Her existence," he continued, "marks the fall of false kings, and the rise of the true Alpha." Her gaze snapped to him. He didn't look away. In the silence, something unsettling unfurled in her chest. Not fear. Not hope. Something more dangerous than both, possibility. "And you think that's me?" she whispered. "I don't think." He let out a slow breath. "I know." The sanctum vibrated faintly, as though agreeing. "But I've seen visions," she said, voice cracking around the memory. "I've seen the empire burning. The city falling. Wolves turning on each other. Every dream. I'm in the center of it." He nodded. "Prophecy doesn't show the cause. Only the crossroads." She stared at him, confusion twisting her chest. "What if I'm the destruction?" He stepped closer, closing the final distance, and when he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, reverent, steady, unshaken. "What if you're the salvation?" Her breath trembled. The flames in the braziers bent toward her. The symbols glowed brighter. The air thickened with something alive. She felt the power rise again beneath her skin. Not the frantic, burning loss of control she feared, but something steadier. Something ancient. Something that answered this place as though it had been waiting centuries for her to stand in it. Her knees almost buckled. He caught her elbow, not gripping, not claiming, just supporting. His touch wasn't cold or burning. It was grounding. Anchoring. "Breathe," he murmured. "Let it settle." She closed her eyes, drawing air into her lungs until the trembling eased, until the humming under her skin softened into something like a heartbeat, older than her own, older than her pack, older than the empire. When she opened her eyes again, the runes had rearranged. A new line glowed. One she hadn't seen before. One that seemed to have appeared the moment she touched the sanctum. He looked up at it too, expression tightening. The inscription was clear. "The Child of the Flame shall bind the Alpha King, or burn him." She stepped back sharply, heart hammering. His jaw clenched, not with fear, but with a realization that struck him as deeply as it struck her. "What does that mean?" she breathed. He looked at her, the firelight catching in the edges of his eyes, powerful, controlled, but shadowed now with a truth he hadn't wanted to voice yet. "It means," he said quietly, "that your destiny and mine are entwined." Her pulse stuttered. His next words hit with the weight of a fate larger than either of them. "And nothing in this empire will survive the moment you choose which of us burns." The ascent from the underhalls felt like climbing into a furnace of judgment. The stone steps pulsed with distant drums, slow, ritualistic, ancient rhythms that made the air vibrate through my ribs. His hand hovered near mine without touching, as if the slightest brush might ignite something neither of us was prepared to name. When we broke into the open night, the world opened into a spectacle of power, an arena carved from volcanic stone, ringed with torches that bled fire into the darkness. Wolves in ceremonial armor stood in tiered formations around the circular pit, metal plates etched with lineage sigils glinting like cold stars. The sky above churned with storm-heavy clouds, yet every torched flame burned upright, unmoved, as if the air itself bowed in obedience to whoever would claim dominance tonight. The moment we stepped into view, a murmur rolled through the crowd, low, sharp, instinctive. They didn't whisper like people. They whispered like a pack scenting danger. Their attention struck my skin like rain needles, each glance slicing deeper than claws ever could. Some eyes widened in fascination. Others flared in warning. All of them burned with one truth. I wasn't welcome here. He walked beside me with the steady gait of a ruler carved from war. Shoulders squared. Jaw locked. Every step spoke possession and defiance, yet he didn't reach for me. Not yet. Not when so many watched for even the smallest proof of weakness. The drums halted. Silence expanded like a living thing. Then the first rival alpha stepped forward. He emerged from the eastern column of armored wolves, broad-shouldered, stone-faced, with braids marking victories and scars marking surviving them. His voice cut through the stillness. "Show them," he commanded. At first, I thought he meant my escort. But his gaze was pinned on me, hungry, assessing, almost triumphant. And before I could even take a breath, the matriarch of his line stepped up behind me and gripped my arm with fingers like iron vines. A hiss rippled across the arena as she yanked the sleeve of my ceremonial wrap down to my elbow. Gasps broke into the air. There, exposed under the stadium torchlight, burned the mark every wolf in this empire knew, the branded crest of my bloodline. The symbol of betrayal. The condemnation my ancestors never lived long enough to explain. The stain no one allowed to fade. The arena erupted. Shouts collided midair. Armor clattered. Somebody snarled. Somebody else spat. A circle of spears dropped in perfect unison, their tips pointed toward my heart. He moved instantly. Before the closest warrior could close in, he stepped between us. Not with the flash of a shift, not with the flare of claws, but with the full, cold authority of a sovereign who did not need to bare fangs to halt a battlefield. Enough. The word snapped through the arena like a crack of lightning. Several wolves flinched. A few bowed their heads instinctively. But the rival alpha didn't. He advanced until he stood just a breath away, shoulders squared against the weight of tradition older than any of us. "You brought a cursed lineage to the mating ceremony," he said. "You insult every ancestor watching. No outcast may stand among us. No branded blood may bond with any alpha. It is written." "And rewritten," he replied coolly, "when the old laws rot." A collective growl rolled across the arena. The rival alpha lifted his chin toward the council platform, 6 elders draped in ceremonial wolfskins, each bearing the authority to uphold or overturn any decree. Their eyes were flint. Their silence was deliberate. One elder stepped forward, staff striking stone. "Bring her here." My pulse hammered. Wolves parted, creating a narrow, merciless path toward judgment. The torches dimmed as if drawing breath, waiting for the spectacle. He didn't move. Neither did I. The elder's gaze sharpened. She carries the mark of a condemned bloodline. She cannot stand in this ceremony. She cannot stand beside you. She cannot stand above her station. The air tightened. Every flicker of fire seemed to lean closer. Another elder, the one known for his brutal interpretations of the law, struck his staff as well. We do not shame the Empire with cursed blood on sacred nights. Remove her. Now. Spears re-aimed, this time not just at me, but at him. Their message was clear. Submit, or lose everything. Thunder rolled overhead, thick enough to rattle the stone walls. A wolf in the upper tiers shifted from agitation, for bristling in the flickering light. Another followed. The arena swayed with building unrest, bodies trembling on the cusp of violence. He remained perfectly still. Firelight carved sharp shadows across his face, sharpening the tension in his jaw, the rigid coil of restraint in his shoulders. Then the elder delivered the ultimatum. Choose your empire. The staff dropped. Or choose the cursed girl. The words struck harder than any blade. The arena fell silent, so silent I could hear my own heartbeat, frantic and uneven. Wolves leaned forward, their breaths synchronized like a single enormous creature waiting for its king to choose allegiance or destruction. A tremor rippled through the crowd. They wanted him to abandon me. They expected him to. The laws demanded it. The legacy demanded it. The throne demanded it. He breathed once, a long, deliberate inhale that didn't waver. Then he spoke. I choose the truth. His voice didn't rise, yet it sliced through every wolf present. And the truth is this, if she is condemned, then so am I. Gasps exploded. The arena nearly shook itself apart. The elders recoiled as though he had spat fire. Warriors re-evaluated their stance, shifting weight, gauging the distance between loyalty and rebellion. Every wolf in the amphitheater felt the balance of the empire tilt toward collapse. The rival alpha stepped closer, voice drenched in fury. You would burn your empire for her? I would burn the lies behind your laws, he growled, before I let them touch her. The torches roared as if feeding on the surge of power in his words. The rival alpha lifted his hand. At once, 50 armored wolves slammed their spears into position. I felt the world constrict. The heat of bodies surrounding us, the metallic tang of readiness in the air, the rumbling growls gathering like a chorus of thunder. He didn't shift. He didn't step back. He didn't falter. Instead, he turned just enough for his eyes to find mine, steady, unyielding, shadowed with something I couldn't name yet. Something that made the chaos around us feel suddenly distant, as if everything hung on the thin, unspoken line stretching between us. The rival alpha snarled. Take her. He didn't finish. The world snapped. Not with violence. Not with a shift. But with him stepping forward, placing himself directly in front of me, shielding me so completely that not a single spear tip remained in my line of sight. A declaration stronger than any vow. A defiance that rewrote the air. A claim no wolf dared interrupt. The arena vibrated with tension. Thousands of eyes locked on the two of us, on the impossible choice he had just made, on the unraveling of a ceremony that had stood unbroken for centuries. And then, the first spear moved. Not toward me. But toward him. The world held its breath. And the night readied itself for war. The first spear hadn't even finished falling before I moved, running, breaking from the ring of wolves, forcing my body through the nearest gap between warriors. Their shock bought me seconds, nothing more. I didn't look back. I didn't dare. His shout followed me, low, commanding, desperate, but the clash of metal and the eruption of snarls drowned everything behind me. I ran until the roar of the arena faded into the choking quiet of the trees. Moonwood waited like a living beast. The forest rose in ancient columns, their bark blackened by storms older than kingdoms, their branches twisting into a canopy that strangled the moonlight into thin, silver threads. Cold night wind curled around me with the scent of damp earth, crushed leaves, and old stories whispered by things long dead. I pushed deeper until my legs buckled beneath me, dropping to one knee as pain ignited up my side, fresh blood seeping from a spear graze I hadn't even felt in the chaos. I forced myself forward anyway, stumbling through the underbrush until I found a hollow beneath an arch of fallen trees. Shaking fingers gathered kindling. A spark stone scraped against flint. Each strike sent slivers of silver fire scattering across the ground, embers rumored to be the remnants of ancient Roman wolves' hunts, still shimmering with echoes of power. The fire caught, small but steady, its glow wrapping me in a fragile, temporary safety. Warmth licked across my skin, softening the tremor in my breathing. The forest fell still around me, as if listening. As if waiting. I shouldn't have run. I shouldn't have left him. But if I stayed, he would have died for me. I curled closer to the fire, pressing a hand against my wound. The sting sharpened, but the pain grounded me, proof I was still here, still fighting, even as the weight of the night's judgment tried to crush me. A twig snapped. Every muscle in me locked. I didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Another step. Slow. Intentional. My heart skidded painfully against my ribs. Then his scent hit me, warm cedar, storm-washed air, and that undercurrent of burning resolve that always curled deep into my chest. He emerged from the shadows like the forest had shaped him from darkness itself. His shoulders rose and fell with heavy breaths, each one dragging the tension in his body tighter. He saw the blood on my side. And his expression broke. He came toward me without hesitation, dropping to one knee at my level, the fire's silver glow painting sharp lines across his face. "You ran again." The words weren't angry. They were raw. Threaded with something close to fear, though he tried to bury it beneath control. I swallowed hard. I had to. "You didn't." His voice deepened, low and rough around the edges. "You keep choosing the world that wants you dead instead of the one person fighting for you." My throat tightened. The fire crackled softly between us, scattering sparks across the dark. His gaze followed every breath I took, every subtle tremor in my fingers. "You shouldn't be here," I said. "They'll track you. They'll think I—" "Let them think." He leaned closer, hands braced on either side of me, not touching but surrounding, caging me in warmth and stormlight. "You ran with an open wound into a forest that devours the weak. You'd rather bleed alone than let me protect you." He reached for me. I flinched. His hand froze midair. Not because he doubted himself, but because he understood me so easily it hurt. "Trust me," he said quietly, "or leave." The words cut deeper than any threat, any decree. They weren't an order. They were a fracture in his voice he didn't want me to hear, a truth he didn't know how to offer gently. I exhaled shakily, eyes dropping to the fire. "You saw what they did when they saw the mark. I can't stay in a world that wants me erased." He shifted closer until our knees brushed. "Then stay with me." My pulse stumbled. "You can't say that," I whispered. "I can. And I am." Silence wrapped around us again, but this one didn't suffocate. It pulsed. It thickened. It warmed. He slowly reached for my wound, and this time I didn't pull away. His fingers hovered over my skin before finally resting there, gentle, steady, reverent. Heat spread from his touch, soothing the sharp sting into a deeper, more bearable ache. "You tracked me fast," I murmured. He huffed a faint breath. "Your scent is impossible to ignore." The smallest smile tugged at my lips. "Is that a compliment?" "It's a problem," he said quietly, eyes flicking to mine. "One I can't make myself fix." My heartbeat faltered, then quickened again. The air between us tightened with the weight of everything unsaid. His thumb brushed lightly across my side, just enough to test whether I'd pull away. I didn't. The fire crackled. A silver ember drifted onto his arm, glowing against his skin before fading. He didn't react except for a slight tightening of his jaw, as if the heat touched him in a way he wasn't ready to admit. He finally spoke again, voice softer. I told the council I'd burn the Empire before I let them touch you. My chest clenched. Why? He met my gaze, really met it. His eyes were stormlight and desperation and something painfully human beneath the authority he wore like armor. My father died protecting me, he said. From a cursed wolf. One from your bloodline. My breath caught. Then you should hate me. I tried. His voice was barely above a whisper, edged with vulnerability so stark it felt like a wound. But I can't. Every instinct I have should reject you. But the closer I get, the less sense the world makes without you in it. The fire hummed, as if it understood. You think I don't fear what this could mean, he continued, leaning in, shadows wrapping him like a cloak. You think I don't question whether fate is playing some cruel trick on us? His hand tightened slightly on my waist, grounding me. Grounding him. But even my father's death can't make me fear you. Something deep inside me cracked open, fragile and unprepared. I've seen you before, I whispered. His brow furrowed. When? In dreams. My voice trembled despite me. Long before I ever stepped into your empire. Before I even knew your name. I saw your face in places I'd never been. Heard your voice calling me. Felt your anger, your grief, your loneliness. I thought I was losing my mind. I swallowed. But then I saw you in the flesh, and everything aligned. Like I had been waiting for someone I already knew. He stared at me as if the world itself tilted. His breath deepened. His chest rose and fell too slowly, too deliberately, like he was restraining something barely containable. You felt me before you met me, he said, voice low. Like a bond. Something like that. He leaned closer, inch by inch, until his breath warmed my lips, until the fire cast shadows along his jaw, until the night folded around us so tightly nothing else existed. Say it again, he murmured. I saw you, I whispered. His forehead touched mine, a silent surrender. I could feel the tremor in his breath. The heat rolling off his body. The restraint in every taut line of muscle, like he was one heartbeat away from pulling me into him and letting the world burn around us. His hand rose to my jaw, brushing a stray strand of hair behind my ear. The slightest touch. The smallest invitation. The kind of gentleness that undid me more than any danger ever had. We breathed the same breath. The space between us vanished. Our lips barely brushed. A roar tore through the forest. Thunderous. Violent. Close. The fire guttered. Birds exploded from the treetops. The earth itself shivered beneath us. He snapped his head toward the sound, muscles coiling, senses sharpening into lethal precision. That's not a wolf, he said. And the forest stopped breathing. The roar still echoed through the moonwood when everything in him tightened. Muscles coiled, breath locked, senses flaring outward like a blade drawn too fast. The night's hush thickened, heavy as wet soil pressed over a grave. She felt the shift inside him, the subtle edge of instinct taking control. But before either of them could move, before they could decide whether to run or stand their ground, the forest lit with distant torchlight. Not a creature. Not a beast. A hunting party. The council had found them. By the time they reached the forest's edge, the ceremonial horns were already blaring across the empire. Their low, thunderous notes rolled through the ground beneath their feet, shaking loose leaves from branches like dying breaths. He took her hand, not gently, not softly, but with the kind of grip that said I'm terrified of losing you, and pulled her toward the sound. The trial awaited them. Moonwood thinned into open land, and the Empire's grand ritual ground rose from the earth like a bleeding wound. An arena carved from black stone and ancient bones. Thousands of wolves lined the steps in armor etched with old Roman sigils, their eyes glowing as the moons rose silver and low. A center platform waited, circled by torches and council banners snapping in the cold wind. The moment they stepped into the clearing, silence swallowed everything. The Alpha King stood tall beside her, though she could feel the tension running beneath his skin like a wild current. He led her toward the platform, their steps echoing across the stone floor. Every gaze cut through her. Every whisper stung like a strike. Cursed. Ember blood. She should have been burned. She'll ruin the ceremony. She'll ruin us. But she kept walking, chin lifted, shoulders tense, fire trembling beneath her skin like a beast begging to break free. His presence beside her anchored her, but even he couldn't soften the hostility raging around them. The elders stood in a tight formation at the platform's center, cloaked in obsidian robes, holding scrolls and relics that glowed faintly with power. Their masks hid their faces, carved in the likeness of wolves with hollow eyes that followed her every movement. At their front stood his second-in-command. A man she had only seen in passing, stern, loyal, unyielding. His expression held none of the warmth or conflict she saw in the Alpha King. Only cold resolve. Begin, one of the elders commanded, voice echoing unnaturally through the arena. The trial was meant to be symbolic, conducted to determine whether she could remain beside him for the final stages of the mating ceremony. But the air already reeked of a decision made long before she entered the arena. The elder unrolled a scroll written in ancient ink. We present the prophecy of seventh flame. Her stomach twisted. She had never heard of such a prophecy. When the elder began to read, the lie was unmistakable. In the age of silver moons, the Ember Wolf shall rise in flame and ruin. Her fire shall swallow the empire. Her bond shall bring death to the Alpha King. Her existence is the omen of war. Destroy her, or fall by her hand. The words reverberated through the arena like a death knell. Her pulse stuttered. She stared at the scroll, at the trembling hands that held it. That's not real, she whispered, voice cracking. That prophecy doesn't exist. The elder's mask tilted. Do you dare claim knowledge above the council? He stepped forward instantly, voice sharp as a blade. This prophecy was never shown to me. The elders ignored him. The second-in-command stepped closer, expression tightening. There is more. He turned toward the crowd and lifted another scroll, one she recognized instantly. A prison record. Her prison record. She comes from a bloodline exiled for violence. She burned her altar as a child. Destroyed her pack's ritual grounds. And she was sentenced to the criminal's block for nearly killing another wolf during a shift. Gasps rippled through the arena. He knew. Someone had told him. Someone who had been close enough to her past to deliver every wound she'd ever survived. The second-in-command's gaze sharpened. I warned you, my king, she is too dangerous to keep near the throne. Her heart cracked. But the worst was still coming. 2 guards stepped behind her, gripping her arms before she could react. They shoved her forward until she stood alone in the center of the arena, beneath the glare of torches and thousands of accusing eyes. A rock struck her shoulder. Another hit her leg. Then a rotten fruit burst against her side. The crowd erupted. Monster! Kill her! She will destroy us. Protect the Alpha King. Her breath hitched. She searched the sea of faces for him, panic rising in her chest like a storm. She found him a few steps behind, frozen between action and restraint. His jaw clenched, his hands fisting, his eyes blazing with conflict. He hesitated. Just for a second. But the second was enough to shatter something inside her so completely she felt it break like bone beneath a blade. She swallowed a sob. The torches blurred into streaks of orange light. Her own pulse drowned out the crowd. A cold numbness swept through her, replacing fear with something sharper. Something alive. Something burning. Don't, he said, stepping forward when he saw the change in her eyes. But it was too late. The fire inside her ripped free. Silver flame exploded from her chest in a violent pulse, cracking the stone beneath her feet and shattering the chains the guards had locked around her wrists. The blast through the closest elder's back, slamming them into the arena pillars. The crowd fell silent as heat surged around her, swirling upward in spirals of glowing embers. Her breath came out in sharp, shaking bursts. Her eyes glowed bright enough to reflect in every terrified gaze around her. His voice reached her through the ringing in her ears. "Wait, please, don't run. I didn't choose them over you." Her heart clenched painfully. But hesitation, his hesitation, was still fresh in her veins. Fresh enough to hurt. Fresh enough to break her. Tears streaked down her face, steaming as they touched her burning skin. "I trusted you," she whispered, the words trembling with heartbreak. "And you doubted me." His face twisted in agony. "I didn't." But she didn't stay. Silver flame surged beneath her feet. Her body shot upward, landing at the edge of the arena. The fire crackled through her hair, through her veins, through the world she had tried so desperately to trust. And then she ran. Not like before. Not out of fear. She ran because her heart couldn't bear another second in the presence of the one person she shouldn't have loved, the one person whose hesitation proved the world was right about her. She fled into the night, sobbing, burning, her power spilling behind her in a trail of silver embers that lit the empire like a falling star. And for the first time in his life, the Alpha King could not follow. The air was heavy with smoke and silver sparks as the first screams tore through the night. The arena had been reduced to a jagged skeleton of shattered stone, scorched by the force of her silver flame. The council lay scattered among the rubble, some unconscious, others frozen in terror, but none dared rise. The crowd had fled, leaving only echoes of panic bouncing off walls that had once held authority like an iron fist. And beneath it all, a low rumble shook the earth, a sound so deep it resonated in her bones. She froze, every hair on her body rising, instincts flaring. The ground cracked, jagged lines splitting the ruins like the scars of the world itself. From the shadows, it emerged. A wolf, but no ordinary wolf. This was a creature of nightmare, forged from centuries of Roman curses and blood rituals. Its eyes glowed molten gold. Its fangs dripped with shadow fire, each exhale curling into black smoke. Muscles bulged unnaturally, veins glowing faintly with a cursed energy that pulsed with malevolence. It towered over the shattered pillars, claw-scraping stone that had survived empires. She recognized immediately what it wanted. It had been summoned, fed lies, and magic from the old rituals. Her blood was the key. Only her power could complete the beast's twisted rite. Her hands clenched into fists, silver fire igniting beneath her skin. The sensation of flame crawling along her veins was no longer fear, it was strength, raw and undeniable. The ember inside her roared in response to the predator, matching its growl with a vibration deep in her chest. She didn't run. She had no reason to hide anymore. Then, from the edge of the arena, the Alpha King appeared. His eyes found hers instantly, the heat of recognition sparking a tether neither time nor betrayal could sever. His body was taut, coiled for combat, yet calm beneath the storm. The two of them stood on opposite sides of the open ground, separate yet connected, a silent bond burning brighter than any flame she had ever known. The beast lunged. Her pulse accelerated, instinct screaming. She shifted fluidly, silver light coursing through her muscles as she became more than human. Her claws tore through the air, meeting the beast's shadowed hide with sparks that lit the night brighter than torches. It snarled, and the sound rattled the arena ruins, shaking loose stones that tumbled like falling stars. He was beside her before she realized it, his hands gripping the air like twin hammers of control, holding the beast at bay with sheer force of will and the authority of an Alpha King. They moved together, two forces entwined, not just fighting the same enemy but channeling each other's strength, each heartbeat synchronized with the other. The ground beneath them cracked again, splintering along veins of energy she could feel coursing into the earth. Moonlight filtered through the clouds, red and ominous, bathing the battlefield in the hue of blood. The beast's eyes locked on her again, and for a moment, she felt the old fear prickling at the edges of her mind, fear of being used, fear of losing control, fear of the destiny others had forced upon her. Then she remembered everything. Every exile, every betrayal, every trial. Every whispered curse. Every hand that had pushed her to the auction block. Every time the world had tried to make her into a sacrifice. And in that remembrance, she felt something awaken deeper than flame, herself. "I am not your curse," she roared, the words shaking the air, dripping with power and defiance. "I am your fire." The silver flames exploded outward, wrapping around the beast like a living cage. Its growls twisted into shrieks as it tried to tear free, but every movement only fed her power. She could feel her energy connecting with the earth, the stones, the very air, binding the monster in a silver web of force it could not escape. He fought beside her, striking with precision, his claws cutting through shadowed sinew, keeping the beast from turning on the civilians who had yet to flee. Each glance they exchanged was unspoken communication, trust, recognition, desire, and the acknowledgement that together, they were unstoppable. The arena shook violently. Columns toppled, stone pillars splitting under the tension of unleashed magic and raw strength. Sparks of silver fire shot into the sky, mingling with the blood-red moon. The earth shivered beneath her feet, yet she stood firm, planted like the roots of the ancient trees she had once fled to. Her flame pulsed again, brighter, hotter, pushing the creature to its knees, forcing it to submit without breaking it entirely. She wanted it alive, not destroyed, alive as a warning, alive as proof that even monsters could be controlled, that even curses could be faced and bent by will. He stepped closer, his hand finding hers instinctively. The contact was electric, grounding yet amplifying the fire within her. They moved as one, circling the beast, controlling its rage, turning it from predator to prisoner. The monster finally fell, chest heaving, eyes still glowing but dulled, forced into submission by a power it had never anticipated, hers. The wind howled through the broken arena, carrying the scent of ash, smoke, and wet earth. Silver embers drifted lazily into the sky, each a testament to her awakening, to her claim of power. She lifted her chin, her chest heaving, flames licking the edges of her hair. "I am not your sacrifice," she said again, louder this time, letting every witness in the ruins hear. "I am not your cursed Ember Wolf. I am your fire. And I choose when I burn." He didn't speak immediately. He simply let her words settle between them, the echo of silver fire ringing louder than any horn, louder than any decree. Then he finally placed a hand on her shoulder, not to restrain, not to command, but to anchor, to acknowledge. "You have claimed what is yours," he said softly. "And we stand together." She looked at him, really looked, and saw the truth reflected in his eyes, admiration, awe, love, and an unspoken apology for the moment of hesitation that had once felt like betrayal. But the calm did not last. The beast's body stirred subtly, muscles twitching under the strain of the silver web she had woven. It was subdued, but it had not been destroyed. It still breathed, still had the capacity for violence, still represented a threat that could rise again. The ember of warning glowed in her chest, a reminder that claiming power did not end destiny, it only prepared her for the trials ahead. And as she stood there, flames winding along her limbs like living jewelry, moonlight bleeding red above, she understood fully that she had become more than a survivor. She had become the force no prophecy could dictate, no counsel could control, no beast could overpower. She was the spark in the darkness, the ember that refused to die, and the fire that would protect everything she loved, even if the world had spent centuries telling her she was nothing but ruin. The ruins trembled one final time. The wind carried whispers of fear, reverence, and awe. And somewhere, beneath the stones, deep in the veins of the empire, something older stirred. Something that had watched centuries pass, waiting for the Ember Wolf to awaken fully. She felt it in the silver flame, in the heat of her blood, in the steady beat of the Alpha King's presence beside her. She was ready. And the world, for all its counsels and curses, had no choice but to recognize it. Her eyes swept over the battlefield, resting finally on him, and she whispered, barely audible, but laden with certainty, "I am not yours to break. I am mine to command." And for the first time, the night seemed to acknowledge it. The moon paused its descent. the wind stilled. The ruins held their breath. The Empire had witnessed a new dawn, she was fire incarnate, and nothing, beast, council, or fear, would extinguish her. Yet beneath that victory, beneath the roar of her reclaimed power, the subtle tremor in the earth reminded her, and him, that this was only the beginning. The shadows had not vanished. The night had only shifted. And somewhere in the darkness, something waited, hungering for the Ember Wolf's return. The smoke of the ruined arena still hung thick in the night air, curling around shattered pillars like ghostly serpents. Silver embers drifted lazily, fading into the darkness, leaving her standing in the open, breathing hard, chest heaving with the fire she had just unleashed. The crowd, scattered across the ruined arena, dared not move. Their eyes were wide, awe mingled with fear. Whispers slithered across the stone like invisible snakes. Some called her cursed, others called her chosen. None dared approach. She moved slowly, almost instinctively, each step carrying the weight of everything she had endured. The cobblestones beneath her feet were scorched, yet her bare feet felt nothing but the pulse of power flowing through her veins. She had destroyed and saved in the same breath. She had burned chains, shattered expectations, and yet, she couldn't tell if the Empire would see her as savior or threat. The weight of uncertainty pressed against her like a physical force, and she welcomed it, the tension of not knowing, the edge of the unknown, more familiar than safety had ever been. The Alpha King followed, but he did not come closer. His hands hovered in the air, as though reaching out might fracture the fragile bond that had been forged in fire and blood. His eyes searched hers, storm-tossed, conflicted. For a heartbeat, she felt a pang of betrayal, a quiet ache that whispered, "You can't trust anyone completely." Yet beneath it all, there was understanding, respect, and something heavier, desire restrained by honor and fear. He did not step forward. He let her decide her own path, even as he lingered at the edge of her world. The wind stirred, carrying the distant cries of those who had witnessed her power. She shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of every gaze, every judgment, every whispered prophecy she had been handed since birth. Each eye upon her asked questions she had no answers for. Are you the ruin of this empire, or its salvation? Can we trust you, or must we fear you? She felt the pull of every choice, every consequence, but mostly, she felt the raw, untethered pulse of her own fire, screaming to be unbound. She turned slowly, walking toward the edges of the forest, toward the shadows that promised solitude, and maybe understanding. The ground beneath her trembled faintly, a reminder that her power was not just her own, it was the echo of ancestors, the lineage of Ember Wolves, the force of destinies that had waited centuries to be claimed. Every step was a statement, a declaration. She would not be bound. She would not be broken. She would not be a pawn in a prophecy written by fearful hands. The Alpha King finally spoke, voice low and strained, carrying through the night like a quiet plea. Stay, with me. Stand with me. Her gaze flicked to him, her own eyes reflecting the silver glow of the embers still lingering in the air. Her throat tightened. Every instinct screamed to trust him, to reach out, to step back into the warmth and strength that had become her anchor. But fear, of betrayal, of failing, of choosing wrongly, kept her rooted in place. She could see the struggle in his eyes, the hesitation, the war between duty and desire. And then, the question hit, not just for her, but for anyone watching, anyone listening, anyone who had ever faced the edge of fear and choice. Would you follow her into the fire, or run from it? Would you trust what the world calls cursed, or believe in what it refuses to understand? Could you stand with her, or would you let the flames consume you from a distance? The night seemed to hold its breath with her, and the wind whispered across the ruins, carrying a haunting chorus of possibilities. Shadows twisted among the remains of pillars and scorched stone, and the faint echo of silver fire pulsed through the air like a heartbeat that refused to die. Her figure, luminous and defiant, seemed to float, untethered, yet unbroken. Every scar, every betrayal, every exile had led her here, and every choice she now made radiated power, independence, and a fierce clarity of self. For a moment, time itself stilled. The Alpha King's hand reached toward her, hesitated, and then fell back, uncertain of his right, uncertain if he could cross the line between reverence and possession. She glanced at him, heart aching, breathing in the cool night air, filled with silver sparks and embers, and understood the truth: he could fight beside her, he could trust her, he could love her, but only if she allowed it, only if she chose him as much as he had chosen her. The wind whispered again, this time more insistent, carrying the unspoken question to the listener: would you fear her, or would you follow her? Would you stand beside the Ember Wolf, knowing the fire she carries might consume the world, or walk away and let destiny decide without you? Her figure began to fade into the shadows of the forest, silver embers trailing behind her like sparks caught on the night wind. The Alpha King's silhouette lingered at the ruins, watching her go, muscles coiled, eyes burning with emotion, every ounce of restraint a testament to the battle between desire and duty. And then, a soft, poetic cadence carried through the night, inviting every heart that had held its breath in anticipation. If this story lit something inside you, subscribe to Sophie's Romance Collections. Here, we tell tales that burn. The forest embraced her like a cloak, leaves brushing against her bare arms, branches whispering secrets older than empires. Each step deeper into the shadowed woods was a step away from what she had known, a step toward what she was becoming. Yet beneath the solace of trees and darkness, the ground trembled faintly, an echo of power that was not entirely hers, a warning that her trials were far from over. From the shadows beyond the clearing, a figure emerged, hood drawn low, robes shifting with every subtle movement. There was no urgency, no rush, only the slow, deliberate presence of something that had waited for centuries, watching, calculating. The voice came, soft as silk and edged with malice, yet unmistakable, whispering to the night, to the embers, to the destiny she carried. She is not the only one who carries the flame. The words hung in the air, intertwining with the silver sparks drifting through the canopy, promising danger, awakening rival power, and hinting at forces beyond comprehension. The forest seemed to shiver, leaves rustling in warning, as if the night itself acknowledged the presence of another player in the game of fates. And far across the mountains, in a temple carved into stone, hidden beneath ancient sigils and wards, another figure stirred. A cursed wolf, long dormant, opened eyes gleaming with forbidden fire, body tensed with power that mirrored hers. The echoes of their destinies began to hum in resonance, distant yet inevitable, a symphony of shadow and flame. The Alpha King watched, silhouette framed by the ruins, heart clenching as a silent understanding settled over him. The battles they had survived, the fires they had ignited, were only the beginning. There were forces yet to reckon, enemies yet to rise, and choices yet to be made. And then, a voice from the distant temple whispered like a prophecy carried on the wind, heavy with warning and promise. The true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. The night deepened, shadows lengthened, and the Ember Wolf's figure vanished completely into the forest. The embers faded, but the fire within her, and the call to destiny, burned brighter than ever, leaving every witness, every listener, every soul who had followed her story trembling with anticipation, and longing for the next chapter to ignite. The empire would never be the same. The forest would hold its secrets, and the night would wait. But one truth remained, clear and unyielding. She was no longer a victim, no longer a pawn. She was fire incarnate, and nothing, not councils, not beasts, not prophecy, could deny her claim. And somewhere, in the silent sweep of shadow and starlight, destiny whispered again, echoing through mountains and forests, calling her forward. Her story had only begun.